Two.
I'm speaking this morning with Yuval Avital in the studio in Milan. Yuval is a multimedia artist and composer, Israeli of origin, who's now working in many different media. He's contributed to the book with his work on summer houses and developing visuals and music related to summer houses and the existential meaning of being in them. So let him explain to us what it means to be a multimedia artist.
Well, working in the field of multimedia meaning that you use different mediums to express yourself. These mediums can be addressed in many layers as separate things that you blend them afterwards, as things that you do at the same time, an approach toward visual and sonic at the same time, for example, or architecture and sound, or gesture and music, and all can be dealt with as a synchronized entity which creates its own small universe. Now, the classical European paradigm was doing quite an effort over the centuries to create separation between languages of art, from the point of ritual, in which ritual you have a total art, in which sound, gesture, meaning, smell even are combined to create a very powerful immersive experience, like in the church ceremony, which is one of the biggest scripts, multimedia scripts of all times. No, the mass has the sound of the bells and the smell of the incense and the chants and the outfit. No, the classical European paradigm started separating until you have pure music, like in Bach, out of the Fugue. You have pure poetry. You have pure painting. At a certain point, you had a return to the search of more art forms working at the same time. It happens during the first Baroque era in music time, in historical time, Renaissance era, the opera, where Monteverdi and fellows try to create, recreate the tragedy, the Greek tragedy, and to create something that will blend the arts. Until in the end of 19th century, you have Wagner that speaks of total opera. So for me, the concept of total opera is something that is very important to me. This is when I create works in opera houses. I create these iconsonic works, iconsonic operas, where visual become like iconography, immediate, direct, and music also arriving to a point where it stops being music, it starts being just sound, and sound as an expressive force are blending together to create an immersive yet very immediate expression. This can be also applied not just to an opera house, but also to a museum, to a huge hangar, an ex-industrial place. It can become a sculpture, it can become an installation, it can become an artwork.
Give me a sense, please, for how you see the audience experiencing and working with sometimes what might seem as challenging kinds of art forms, because it's very new for them. How do they come to understand it? Do they just spontaneously do this, or they need to be educated to do this? How much of a challenge is it for you?
Well, I think that we are living in a very numb society, where the saturation of information had reached a point where there are many barriers to put something inside, especially in the emotive level. So people had created a form of new conservative approach towards life and also towards art, in which art is a decoration which reaffirms what they already know. They want music to create melodies in one place, in another place music, avant-garde, so-called avant-garde music should be a repetition of an academic paradigm that was based in the 20th century. Or they want the visual arts to be a painting that is hanged or a sculpture, and in front of this you have a strong drive to use all the languages and all the ideas and knowledge of different cultures as a catalyst to an artistic explosion, which
On your side.
my side, I think that there are many artists that are working in this way, even though I am not in dialogue with fellow artists, generally speaking, but there is something about this time that includes historically the knowledge or the awareness of all previous times and many different cultures. I'm not speaking about postmodernism that I just take from here and there and just mix it somewhere. I'm speaking about being really, it's inside of us. And when I speak about me being born in Jerusalem, which is a crossroad of many layers, this comes very naturally. So for the audience, let's take, for example, my last creation, Open Fence, which is a huge sound sculpture made out of 320 tubular bells that are a result of a fence, an iron fence that was transformed into a collective, let's call it sound instrument or musical instrument if you want, that can be played by possibly hundreds of people at the same time. So in this ritual, collective ritual that put people together, that brings people towards find their own sounds, because each one of these bells has inside the clippers, the clappers, that is bamboo, wood, aluminum. There is a lot of study inside, and this cloud of sound can create something which is very ancient as a result. An Indian friend said that it reminded of a temple. Another one, a young friend, thought that it's like a rave party, being in a rave party.
And for the reviewer, it reminded her of her childhood.
A reviewer in a journal said that it's reminded of the childhood, this freedom of playing on a fence, with a stick. What is the most simple way, to address an object, just to make it sound. A fence, which is an anti-fence, that is an open fence. This is how it's called. A fence that become a bridge.
So the immersion is spontaneous. People find a way to play. People find a way to encounter your works that resonates and is meaningful for them.
Yeah, but here you need to be inside the sound. So if you see a documentation of it, there were people also commenting on it, also in social networks and such, said, this is not music, this is noise. And I said, it sounded like interviews they did to the Pink Floyd in the 70s and said, what is it, all this noise? Or in the 50s to the beginning of rock and roll, and said, what is it, all this noise? So there is all these new conservative approaches, extremely egocentric. I don't know why, but when people try to criticize new expression of sound, they always go to Bach, which I love, of course. They say, no, for me music is Bach, and in an endless universe so big, with our such a momentary glimpse of living and being attached to the lymph of life, and in this vulnerability of time, and in this slight of a second of civilization, and starting speaking about, for me, sound is back, is like saying, for me, color is very light gray shade. It's utterly ignorant, utterly stupid, foolish. It's and what I try in my work is, in the means I can, is to give the possibility to take the concept of what you have on the table, in the sense of sound or gesture or visual, and to show a little bit what is outside of the box also, which is still a part of our life. It's threaded in our life. Sound is threaded in our life, visual is threaded in our life, gesture as well, and to create an immersive experience in which art touch, not just in front, but touch.
So the person is involved, they come to it in their own way, but you have a certain sense for the world in which they live. You're trying to awaken themselves and their souls to the world.
Yeah, but with not
their lives.
No aggressivity. It's not an aggressive act. They say, okay, I will force you to an action, you know.
So you don't see yourself in a certain sense as commenting in an active way on the world. You're inviting people into an experience of the world. For you, it sounds like it's a shared moment, rather than a moment in which you, as the composer, as the creator, are forcing a view on people. You're inviting them in to share your experience, it would seem.
In a way, yes.
And bringing their own lives to it. So there's a rapprochement, a bridge. The fence becomes an open fence, becomes a bridge between you as the creative person and the audience to share a moment together. And in that sense, it becomes very fundamental for them.
Let me give you an example of a different work. This work is called, titled Reka. Reka means in Hebrew background, and it is a work for 6 traditional masters, vocal masters, a lama from Tibet, singer from Mongolia, singer from Bukharian singer from Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, singer from Sardinia, from South Africa, and from Iceland, 2 classical percussion players, and 2 crowds that were each time they are recruited locally by social networks and mailing lists and open calls. The first is a vocal crowd of non-musicians. Musicians can participate, but you don't need to be a musician. That create a huge anti-choir of local people. And the second is a crowd of percussion players that don't need to know to read the music. They can be drummers coming from punk, they can be ethnical percussion players. And all these people are writing user-friendly scores, which are a result of visual and textual communication put on page in the timeline. Yes. And it's all in the grid line of a classical, let's say, score, which the 2 classical percussion players are reading, being the markers of time events. And this opera was performed already 3 times in opera houses, in hangars, in festivals, and it creates a kind of a ritual of sound, of voice, in which the first spectator is, of course, the member of the crowd. Because me, that I... One second. So the first spectator, of course, is the member of the crowd himself. Because
in this case, the crowd is not an audience, the crowd is a participant.
Exactly. So someone that never used his voice is invited to become a protagonist in a work in which the slogan, let's say, is share your voice with art. If in Open Fence the slogan was play with art, here it's share your voice with art. And by being an active part of the work and in the process, he or she will have a strong, meaningful experience that they will never forget. You know, I see people that are were members of the vocal crowd coming to me years after and speaking about this experience when they sang with the Lama. And this transformation from a passive consumer of beauty to participant is something not just immersive, but very meaningful. Also for the audience, they are surrounded by the crowds, the vocal crowds, they are surrounded by the percussion crowd, they are submersed with these layers of systems, sound systems, that are working in an equilibrium between them, together with visuals which are details from the score, which are projected in large scale. And it's all creating a kind of, let's say, a ritual of sound, of visuals, of gesture, of unity, but not of let's say, New Age spirituality, even though that you have there also religious figures. It's something that is a result of an equation of the multiplicities.
And the invitation of people to be spontaneous, and the invitation for people to be involved. So the kind of audience that's participating with you, the non-trained audience, and the real audience, so to speak, that's sitting there watching, they're sort of ambiguous because the boundary is unclear. You've developed a new notion of audience and a new notion of participation in this work. Part of the bridging, part of the breaking through the fences.
I don't know if it's new, but it's
new for them.
New for them, yes. You know that in a synagogue, for example, it's never clear who is the soloist. Sometimes, you know, you have people that are singing in different rhythms, different times, each one for himself, and then a collectivity, sometimes different traditions, Sephardics, Yemens, Urfaliks, singing, and so you will have always a patchwork of sound that create this complexity that is, for me, very interesting, very powerful.
Kind of emerging soul. There's an emergence here because the sincerity, the spontaneity, the hidden order, when they work together, it becomes a kind of unified experience.
Yeah.
And not planned. Not planned.
Not planned and extremely planned at
Exactly.
the same time. Because if this is the difference, I think, that the composer mind and the performance artist mind, let's say. You know, the composer wants to define everything. The composer has the tools to define energy, to define pitch, to define time, to define detail inside the intensity.
And the visuals, in this case, as well, all the different elements.
Yes, but you know, so if you have all these details, how you address to someone who don't know how to read these details, you know? I work with Samaritans. Samaritans have very detailed musical liturgy, but they don't read music, and the concept of pitch for them is irrelevant, is secondary. So when you work with people, you need to find a way to communicate something that at the same time will be extremely precise and will give them great freedom. And then when you have orientation and freedom, then something starts to...
Kind of meaning emerges, experience meaning. If we're immersive and meaning and experience all come together from your side as the composer and from their side as the audience and participators.
Yeah.
There's a rapprochement, a bridging between the two. You get to live out your ideas at the beginning that changes them in the end also. Now, we've had a number of conversations on Skype and in person on the theme of nature and the embodiment of nature in your work and the experience of nature in your work as part of this ongoing emphasis on immersiveness, as part of this ongoing emphasis on you as a composer producing something in detail but giving people on the participating and experience end a way of finding meaning themselves and becoming involved themselves. Please give us a sense for your ideas about nature and the ideas about the engagement of people to experience nature.
Okay. So my first experience, direct experience, when the topic was nature, was a series of projects that I did with NASA and as a scientist in 2012, which were
as the European Space Agency.
ESA as European Space Agency, in which the fundamental element was the sound of space, in which space don't have really sound, because to have sound you need to have an atmosphere, either of water or of air. But we created a sonic translation of the electroacoustic energy in space, and it was transformed into installations and performances. These tapes created. Later in 2015 I created
Now, you didn't just create it, you performed it.
it was both an installation that took 3 weeks in a convent, and a concert where I played with electric guitar and visuals and the sound of space.
And the visuals were big visuals of space.
Yeah.
As a big background, the kind you were in front and in relation to them.
Exactly. Elements that I got footage from the space agencies, and I related to them not as a documentary element, but according to a grid line of structural approaches, so symmetries between music and science, different principles, principles of energy, principles of resonation, principles of macro movements, micro movements, etc.
And it led to your kind of personal signature in this relationship. It's not that you were being didactic, it's that you were in relationship to, you were immersed yourself. There was a spontaneous element, or it was all written music? How did that emerge?
Both. There were grid lines, and there were fixed elements, and then there were spontaneous elements too. In 2015 I created Alma Mater, which is the biggest installation I created so far. Alma Mater is a recreation of the archetype of the Great Mother. It was done here in Milan in 2015 in a 1,200 square meter space with a forest of 140 loudspeakers, from which were transmitted hundreds of voices of mothers and grandmothers from all over the world that were recomposed on over 90 layers of sound. Grandmothers from Alaska and from Yemen and from Japan and from Sicily, all blended together with the voices of my grandmother, a Jewish Moroccan grandmother. And with this there was also visuals that I did with elder stars of La Scala Ballet company, and with lace makers and with soil. There was also dialogue with different artists that I invited to this work. Michelangelo Pistoletto, that created the Third Paradise in soil, and the designer Enzo Catellani that created a special kind of light that breathed, and the loudspeakers themselves were made out of clay and from marble, with the great master of Architettura Sonora, which is a leading loudspeaker company. And there, together with the voices of the grandmother, I wanted the voices of the earth. So I started making a dialogue with the ENGV. ENGV is the National Institute of Volcanology and Geophysics. And we had a great discussion about the sound of the earth and how to put it in the range where the human ear can hear it. So you had these let's say dark sounds of the soil together with the voices of the mothers or the grandmothers, and it was very beautiful. And this was a part where spaces unfolded where science going to the loudspeaker. Here you had the human and you had the scientific working together. And now the exhibition that was inaugurated in April 2017 and will be until August 2017 in the Fabbrica del Cioccolato Art Foundation in Switzerland is in Switzerland. It's in the Italian canton, not close to nothing, close to Bellinzona in the Val di Blenio Valley. This is a monographic exhibition which speaks about 3 grades of foreignness between man and nature, in which there are three levels of interaction between man and nature. The first one is complete alienation, which is expressed in the work Foreign Bodies. Foreign Bodies is a work for 7 video projection and 14 loudspeakers. In each screen you have a different dancer, 7 great dancers that are involved in this work. They come from La Scala, from Bejar, from other renowned dance companies, independent choreographers, all women from the age of 20 till the age of 58, that as lost mother natures, they are appearing in different scenes that I filmed in the Blenio Valley, which is a very dramatic pre-Alp valley, in complete nudity, and creating this gesture, sculpture of alienation towards the nature around them. Now, I don't know if you know, but in the 20th century, between the 2 world wars, and also a chunk before the First World War, there was this movement of utopian dance that happened also in Switzerland and was centered in Monte Verita, where there was this utopic dancing where naked men and women were dancing. So here it's, in my Foreign Bodies, it's an anti-utopic, where alienation already reached a critical point where something snapped. And Foreign Bodies, if you eat a fish and a bone stuck in your throat, this is foreign body. It's a medical term. Here the foreign body is the human body, and it's foreign to the great body, nature, trying to be one with it again, but already this need to recreate something, it underlines the strangeness that we created to nature, to the nature as an environment, to the nature as our own bodies, to the nature also as to our own souls in a way. And the 7 dancers, they had very strict indication. The first thing that I asked them was not to dance. So already to ask a great dancer not to dance, it was a big limit. And then there was a kind of a score of gestures, of starting position, ending position, of timeline, in which this work evolved. And the experience, the final result is a loop of 1 hour and a half, so approximately 8 hours of footage, because there are some repetition, 9 hours of sound, which is all around the spectators with large-scale screens, and this is one. The second one in this exhibition is lens. Lens.
As in the lens of a camera?
No, as in land.
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 Different lands.
Land. And land is an interesting term because land, the meaning of land is a piece of earth in which humans define them as a separate chunk, let's say. So you have homeland, you have foreign land, you have no man's land. And land is when we take the map and we start drawing the borders, and from this, land is also connected to one of the most important hyper-nationalistic symbols is the soil, and the man with the soil, the farmer. No, it was used continuously in the 20th century, and it's starting to. There is a revival of hyper-nationalism, unfortunately, or in our times. Lands is a piece. Is a you can call it a sound installation because it's for 8 loudspeakers and a circle of soil. But unlike sound installation, in which it's enough that you stay only a chunk of it and then you continue to get it in a way, lens is very detailed. It's like a book in sound. It's like a narrative in sound. Many episodes, and to really get lens, you need to stay at least 20 minutes sitting or lying down or whatever, just listening how the sound evolves. And the sound is composed out of songs of birds, either real birds or digital bird created. Sometimes there is a vagueness between what is real and what is not real. You have the sounds of nature, either real nature or constructed, synthesized nature, like wind, waves. And you have the voices. You have the voices of farmers singing traditional songs, but you have the voices of tractors creating chorals out of the engines, creating chorals. And you have this repetition of the word land translated in many languages, done by Google Translate. That you have like a creator of loop or of beat, large beat, and you have the soul, and this is something. It brings peacefulness and uncanny layers at the same time. It's if the first one is complete alienation, here is struggle. And the third one is called rechem, which is womb in Hebrew, in which man, or woman, is nature. And there in an industrial elevator shaft, you find the heartbeats of my, at that time, unborn daughter, Alma. And then you hear her first voices and her first breastfeeding. And together with the sound of the seismic movement of Earth. So here, woman, if we started with women in foreign bodies, and here it becomes nature.
In the first case, in the foreign bodies, the women who were dancers were very restricted in formal movement and gesture. And it seems like in the third one, it's a much more natural unfolding of life, a return to so we say, hope and anticipation of unity.
I don't know if it's hope, but it's really, for me being in this moment when Eliza gave birth, it was amazing. There I saw human as nature. And at a certain point, when the push is coming, you see the woman transform to something else. I started crying, not because of Alma at the beginning that was born, but because of Eliza that was radiating something so powerful, so beastly in a
good way.
Good way, good way. It's like a leoness, and then you understand something. Their woman is nature.
Okay, so let me ask you one last thing, because we've spoken about some of my own work where we see people talking about three relations with nature. One we call chilled out, that kind of irony, where they're relaxed in nature, which this is expected. And the other blissed out, where people can be in nature and find the deity and they feel unified with the universe. But the one that was salient for us was this freaked out, where people could feel alone in nature and they could feel scared in nature. And these two emotional themes went hand in hand with the idea that nature should not get in the way of social and human progress, a kind of anti-ecology attitude. And you and I had a bit of a discussion about the depth of human fear in nature, the awful and awe-filled nature, experience of nature. So if you'd comment on the notion of primordial fear, you had some ideas in that area.
Well,
as if we go through generations, as if we go through the very history of humankind, where we're overwhelmed by nature and are looking for a place in nature, whether it's in the context of land, which can be politicized, whether it's in the context of nature that gets stuck in our throats, so to speak, the nature and realities of fear. The origins of fear in nature, because we're looking for our place in nature as humans, and nature is so much greater than we are, if we go back through all the generations of humankind.
Well, no, in 2016, I did, as you well know, an opera together with the United Nations, with UNHCR, in which you took part as an advisor, and it was an opera with refugees. And when the Fabbrica del Cioccolato asked me to create an exhibition with the general theme foreignness, which Franco Marinotti, the curator, had proposed for the first 2 years of this foundation, I knew that I don't want to go to a political layer. And for me, the first thing that went wrong is this kind of foreignness that we have between us and nature. And us and nature, foreignness is already civilization, language, is already, we get further and further away from nature. Agriculture or habitat, not speaking about now the digital world where you have not just persona as a mask of ourselves, but you have a second mask, a mask of the mask, which is our profile, our social network profile. And this distance can create also huge ethical dissonances, because it's a consequences of detachment to nature. I worked with nomads in the past, some 12 years ago, and you see that the connection to nature, which is necessary for the compass of a nomad that lives a cyclic life, in movement, in touch with nature, it brings also towards an ethical position, which is beautiful. And I think that in a way there is a lot of beauty in the hybrid and in the artificial. I work a lot with digital art, you can say, with video and with electronic music and with sound systems, but at the end there is also this distance of ourselves from ourselves in a deeper layer, and this is a bomb. This is a time bomb, because from this violence grows, alienation grows, foreignness grows, depression can emerge, and so for me, well aware that I am an orphan, let's say, of a complete situation of emerging, even of a one given cultural paradigm. I am in a way, I'm
Many worlds.
many worlds, but also like the traveling Jew, going from place to a place.
Your own nomadic life, that kind.
My own nomadic life, external observer sometimes. I recognize in this element of nature something that I would like to share with others in different types of works. Either with visual, where I might create tension between representation and a complexity, with sound, and also with gesture.
So it would seem that, in a sense, to bring our discussion to a close, that you're very sensitive to our relationship with nature, to your responsibility as a composer with nature, to reawaken in the audience the experience of distance from nature, but also in the immersion, in the experience, a kind of opportunity for reconciliation with nature, where they acknowledge their fears. The fears are on the table, the uncertainty about land, the uncertainty about where we are in the world, but through the aesthetic experience, giving people a chance to bring emotions out that may be hidden. Emotions relating to land, emotions relating to meaning. So in a certain sense, they build a bridge to you and to other performers, and perhaps to even other members of the audience, and certainly to the themes that you're proposing.
Each work starts from an idea, an intuition, and then later develops into something complete. I don't think that it would be accurate to say that I am doing it because I want to give to the spectator this or that. Mm-hmm. I start really being very concentrated on myself and my own thoughts. And then there is an out result which is for sure very welcoming to others to participate, to be a part, to experience in different way, with different mediums, from something like a photo that you hang till a small sound sculpture which is around you, to very large installations or operas or performances. But for me, it starts from something very personal, very autobiographic, very intimate, that little by little it's getting open. When it's getting open, it can include others.
And here you, in a sense, as we close, it builds a bridge to something I've been working on for a long time, which is the thinking I that plans, EYE, and the being I, capital I, that lives. And what you're saying is that the artist, the composer, does not intentionally try to manipulate or move the audience, but something starts within themselves, that they evolve and develop in certain kind of aesthetic ideas, but that it has a certain spontaneity that reflects their experience, and that they immerse themselves in the work as the work unfolds. And perhaps in the successful work, you invite others to share in the immersive experience, and that is a basis for success as a composer, as an artist, and as a performer.
Yes, I guess so. I guess so. For me, it's when I look at my past and I see the concerts I did as a guitar player, still doing from time to time, these events which includes hundreds of performers, sometimes the installations, the sound sculptures, the visuals. It's at the end there is There is a lot of beauty when you reach to the point of representation and sharing. It gives meaning to your life. It becomes visible, soundable, notable, touchable, and this is a moment of great beauty. But the creation is never done in order to satisfy a chunk or another chunk of society, or to fulfill a didactic need. There is a moral standing which is a part of me, it's part of my blood, my soul, which is connected sometimes. I'm not afraid to do something that brings a moral position, an ethical position. There are some things which are a little more vague, indirect, but it's always a reflection of an inner that later others can find some symmetries or understanding inside themselves toward the creation. And in this sense, it's like Bach.
I'd like to thank Yuval Avital for talking with me in Milan today and for sharing himself with the audience. Thank you very much, Yuval. Grateful.